Hi, I'm Carrie, and there's something about fire that affects us all. Whether it's feeling the warmth from it or watching the flames as they sort of shift and change in color and in shape, it's kind of mesmerizing. And sitting here, it's kind of peaceful, and yet we know that fire can also be destructive, scary, and even deadly. And right now, maybe you feel like you've sort of been thrown into the fire in this ever-changing part of history that we're walking through. I know I have at times. But the reality is that God is still with us, whether we feel shook or not. And maybe for you, it's a loss of school sports this fall, or being able to visit your grandparents, or even going to a movie theater that you're really missing right now. And I think for me personally, it's made me really reevaluate what I'm saying about how much I love God. Because I found that it's much easier to say that I love God above all else than it is to actually live that out. And for me, I think that God is really growing me, and it's really helped me to realize that we sort of often have this attitude of God plus. It's like, I love God, but plus, I want to be able to do what I want to do, right? If we're really honest. And so what is it for you that maybe you need to think about, well, if not? Like we know that God could wipe out COVID-19 easily, but if not, how will you respond? Or we know that God could help cure us of our mental illnesses, whether you're wrestling with anxiety or depression or something else. But if not, will we choose to worship Him anyway? It's not the first time in history where we've had to deal with some difficult things, but what I want you to think about today, the key question is, how do you walk through fire and still keep a strong faith in the Lord? In the book of Daniel, in chapter 3, there's a story of these three young men. Their name are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abendego. They're teenagers, and they're in really tough times. They're essentially living as slaves, and the king has ordered them to bow down and worship a false god, this golden statue. And they've been told they're going to be thrown into a fiery furnace if they don't obey, and yet this is how they respond. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And He will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Don't you just love that? I mean, this simple declaration of utter confidence in their God. And yet saying, well, if He chooses not to act the way that I want Him to act, I'll still worship and love Him anyway, no matter what. I love that part of it. And just think about if we all adapted that same attitude. There's another biblical man named Job who's facing difficult stuff also, and he said it this way: though He slay me, meaning God, I will hope in Him. And you know what? God could wipe out COVID-19 and all the difficult things we've had to deal with easily. But if not, how are we going to respond as His people? Great question, right? I mean, just imagine if all of us asked God these things in prayer. What might He do? Well, it turns out in this story, He did a miracle. He did an amazing thing. It says the fire had not any power over the bodies of these men. This is talking about they pulled them out. The hair of their heads were not singed, even though they had been in this fiery furnace. Their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come from them. I can guarantee you that I smell like fire, even being this close to it, and yet they were thrown into this fiery furnace and didn't even smell like it. What a miracle. And no matter what fire you're walking through today, it doesn't mean that it has to harm you. God might just choose to do a miracle through it. So just imagine if all Christians adapted this if not attitude, how would it change things? And for you, I want to challenge you this week to write out a prayer to God, asking Him to change all the things that you wish that He would change right now in your life, asking Him all kinds of requests, and yet ending this prayer with this simple line: God, if not, I will choose to love, obey, and worship you anyway.